when I've seen you go through hard things, when you're preaching, oftentimes you're not preaching out of your pain, even though I know you're walking through a painful season.
Right, right.
And you said years ago that you go to the Lord poor, and you come to the people rich.
Yes.
And that's been something when we talk to the students, so we're talking about that oftentimes. But so that's probably part of the reason that you're able to preach even in the midst of these crises and difficulty, because you're trying to find that kind of that right place with heaven, and then preach from there in a transformational moment.
Absolutely. Yeah, I didn't know that early on, and so I would preach out of the season, and I don't mean Christmas and New Year's. I mean preach out of the season of pain or loss or whatever, or if there was something crazy going on morally in the nation or whatever, and you just go after that stuff. Well, it doesn't help anybody. What happened is I would, if I could take an aerial view of the last year of preaching, I'd realize this had impact, this had pick. This really stunk. People may have said amen, they may have liked the message, but there was no lasting impact from this. I could feel it. I could taste it in my mouth afterwards, that it had a religious satisfaction and a sense of addressing things that needed to be addressed, but no lasting effect. And I learned over time that almost all the time there is a place for correction, for bringing real sober words to people, which I have done on many occasions, but I have to be certain the Lord is on it for right now, and it's not a personal word or a word for a team of leaders or whatever it might be. It's got to be a time where the people get a chance to taste the goodness of the Lord. And that's really a big deal, because I learned that over time, and finally I weeded that one part of my approach to the people. I weeded it out completely.
Interesting.
And He has to reintroduce it for me to actually come with a corrective word.
When I'm talking to students, sometimes we use a model of you preach to people's core needs and to their felt needs. Right. And in some ways, the felt needs is I'm fighting with my wife, or there's America's, something's going crazy in the country or whatever, and in some ways it feels like it's some of the pastors and the teachers. Sometimes we're aware of felt needs, like. I have some information for you that'll help you with that felt need. Here's how to communicate in your marriage or whatever. And the pastors are like, hey, that the sheep need to hear this or need to hear that. But I've seen just in your life, with just the raising up of the apostolic office, is that you and Chris, the prophetic, tend to talk out of the core needs of people. Like, I know you're all agitated about this, but here's what we're up to. Here's like the aerial shot again. And in some ways, so it's interesting, because I thought it was just your gifting, but you're actually saying, no, I would look at it, and I started weeding out my reactionary messages.
Yeah, exactly. I didn't do it a lot, but I stopped preaching for effect, in the sense of, like you can go into most any church right now and you can preach against homosexuality or, indebtedness of the nation or whatever. You can get a lot of amens, but there's nobody in there that's making the decision to affect the outcome. So all it is stirring, preaching to the choir, stirring up the emotions of people that you're talking to. It has no long-term effect. Long-term effect comes because of encounter with God, transform people, get into the system, and transform society. And so that's the target. That's what I work out of, that blueprint constantly, trying to, and I don't in any way ever mean to be merciless or not care about the problem, because when I'm working one-on-one, it's all about, the pain that they're in, and to try to help. But sometimes people can be brought out of their problem by finding a higher purpose. Sometimes they can actually realize, I only have this because my vision was small in the first place, and I just piddled around with my life, and they can find that the word of the Lord draws them into something greater, and it really pulls people out of that stuff, So.
And it makes them, Christ in them is the hope of glory. Christ in them is a solution or an answer.
That's it. So
they come into situations with hope. Where they didn't have hope. They come in with some measure of solution and love where they didn't. And so, I found it to be empowering, that you're helping to you're tapped into heaven and you're bringing it to these earthly situations.
That's exactly it. And it makes all the difference in the world on outcome. The thing that encourages me most is it makes a huge difference on how people think about their life, their purpose, their significance, their family, their generations, their purpose for being, their job or assignment in society, whatever it might be. Everything shifts in that moment because, it's empowering. People realize I'm here by God's choice. I'm not just a number on a sheet. I'm actually an individual that God chose to be empowered to have impact. And there's one of the most basic needs in all of our lives is affirmation. It's a God-given hole in us that cries out for affirmation. If you don't know where to get it, you're going to get it from the wrong place. But God gives affirmation by revealing the joy that He has over us and the willingness that He has to impart and empower purpose to us. Such a it's such.
I wonder how many Christians are really tapped into the affirmation of God. That's not even a. And we're kind of waiting for the well done in heaven, the well done, good and faithful servant
that's
there.
That's a good point. Yeah,
rather
that's true.
than the kind of daily affirmation, well done, son. That was pretty courageous what you did there, or those sorts of things.
That's a good point.
I wonder if we're not even wired in to hear that sort of.
We are in our prophetic because we're constantly looking for the gold. Some of the gold that we're calling out it's embryonic in the person, and so we're trying to call them into their destiny. Other times in the prophetic or just in relationships, the affirmation of relationship is I want to affirm what I see God doing in that person. So it happens there, but I think it could happen more.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And we find folks have an affirmation discounting mechanism. Right? It's like just swat it down as it comes, swat it down.
That ain't true. Nice try. You're just trying to make me feel good.
Absolutely.
I'm not buying it.
Absolutely, that thing has to be dewired. That thing's a demonic machine.
That's right.
Not your friend.
You know what? Somebody in one of our staff in second year yesterday, or Tuesday, today's Thursday, Tuesday, made a comment, led prayer time before I got up to speak, and said, some of you guys come from countries that really suffer from what's referred to as the tall poppy syndrome. Anybody, develops kind of head and shoulders above, there's this thing to cut, which we've talked about before. I work in a number of countries. I think it's in every culture in some measure.
No Ben Franklins, no George Washingtons, no Martin Luther King Jr.
Some countries have just perfected the art form, So, but anyway, the one who led in prayer said, "You guys are in California. The state flower in California is the golden poppy, and it is illegal to cut them."
That's good.
And I thought, you know what, that works for me. That's just
good.
Let us embrace that culture that says, you don't cut any poppies.
Yeah, they're growing in the wild. You can't even pick them. You're like, you leave those alone. I remember my kids have picked them before. I don't want to say that on tape, but I'm like, I put that back.
Oops.